In many ways, it has earned a spot in Kenya's history, the first bicameral parliament, the largest one with a record number of women representatives. Well, that's mainly thanks to the Constitution. And let's not forget the highest number of bills passed. But even with all those stunning accolades, we can't quite pop the champagne.
And Mr. Speaker, it is extremely unfortunate.
The National Assembly specifically also found itself on the wrong side of history. From alleged corruption in the committees, a clear interference by the executive, a push for high salaries amidst a weakening economy, and let's not forget how it got nicknamed the House of Shame.
Under members, under Sergeant Attack.
But do the positives outweigh these weaknesses? And what happens when leaders of National Assembly have an honest conversation about their performance? This is the Roundtable with Asha Mwilu.
So gentlemen, thank you so much for joining. Really important discussion we're about to have. Performance of the 11th Parliament, specifically the National Assembly. So we can begin with, if you can grade the National Assembly 2013 to 2017, 0 to 100%, what would it be, Honorable Duale?
Parliament has three key functions: legislation, oversight, and representation.
Yes.
In terms of legislation, we look at how many bills went through the National Assembly, how many have been assented. That I can rate 80%.
80%
because
overall.
over 165 legislation, both from government and from private members, have been assented into law. Oversight, I'll say about 60%.
Okay.
Or 50%. Representation, I can say 50, because in terms of the budget, then Parliament has a very big role. So members of Parliament now can have a role in terms of balancing the resources in their counties.
So 50, 60, and 80?
And 80.
Average in total?
In average, I think this Parliament has done about now 70%.
70%. Professor Manyora, do you agree with that? What's your grade?
My grade, if I'm very fair, sometimes we don't want students to fail. So we give them a pass.
Yeah.
To that extent, I can give them 45%.
But 45% is what? Depending on the system, what's that? It's around a D, D plus?
That is a C minus.
A C minus.
And if you want me to give the reason for Duale to know, so we are not judging the 11th Parliament in the same way we judged previous parliaments. We are in a digital age. The expectations in 2013 are different from the expectation about 10, 20 years earlier.
True.
You see, the population we are serving is a different population. You see? Then we are working under new dispensation, under new constitutional dispensation. And therefore, the expectations are much higher than they were ever before. And this Parliament, I think 45 is just a fair assessment.
All right.
When I'm kind.
Fair enough. Honorable Midiwo, what is your grade?
None.
None?
Yeah, because I think you can't judge people where there are no measurable targets. I think we try to do too much as a country with the new constitution. In general, I think this argument cannot be so narrow as to judging, because Parliament is an organization, arm of government, but also has individuals.
Your organization, Gitungo, have tried to come up with a system of measure for Parliament, for National Assembly, Mzalendo Trust. What would your grade be in terms of the research you've done?
Well, averagely, it is important to grade them, and I'll give them a gentleman's pass. That's a C minus, 40, around that. And there's another function that Honorable Duale forgot to mention.
Yes.
The new constitution added a new function to our parliament. It is in Article 221, whereby parliament is given the mandate to make our budget, and that is elaborated in the PFM Act, Public Finance Management Act. So our parliament has the mandate to make our budget. So the Treasury is usually sets the agenda and comes to plead with them so that they may pass whatever the Treasury has. So budgeting, we can grade it differently, because even though they are saying it's legislation, we can grade it differently.
How? And yeah.
How? Because you know how, if you read Article 94 of the Constitution, my friend Mzalendo, and then next time,
yes.
you bring experts on parliamentary democracy, to grade parliament.
No.
Let me finish. Let me finish.
He's speaking on my professionalism.
No, let me finish.
And I have to come in
let
on
me
that.
finish.
I have to come in on that.
1 minute.
It's
let
very
him,
difficult.
Let him make the point. So you think that Gitungo doesn't deserve a seat at this table?
No. What I'm saying is, I'm being very fair. If you allow me. Can I speak?
Go ahead.
Yeah, so
and it was my turn to speak.
I'll come back to you. I want him to make a point so that you can actually give your rejoinder.
The Constitution itself, Article 94, in fact 93, 94, 95, 96 of the Constitution is the one that deals with the two houses.
Yeah.
And Article 94 and 95 is very specific. And this is for all the three arms of government. When you go to judiciary, the function of the judiciary is very clear. For parliament, both houses, members of parliament are elected only for three key functions: legislation, representation, and oversight.
And we've agreed on that.
And budget is part of legislation. So don't say that budget making is another function.
The dichotomy that he's trying to bring in does not come clearly. But as Professor said, the way we have graded the parliament, the way we have, it's because, in fact, the 11th parliament will go in history as the most powerful parliament since we got independence. The 2010 constitution gave the parliament a lot of powers. It gave them powers. It's not like the parliaments that we had under Kenyatta, under Moi, and under Kibaki. So Kenyans had a lot of expectations from this particular parliament.
So because we've been grading very generally, let's even go specific to those roles that Honorable Duale is talking about. So let's talk about legislation. How many bills have been passed by this parliament?
Over 165 bills, both private and public.
Right.
Excluding, parliament now, those are bills. The other function of legislation is reports of committees.
Yes. About
100. Yes, and then about another 100 motions.
Yes.
Some of them binding, some of them not binding. Because if you say, if your motion ends up with urging,
yes, then
you just want it for public consumption. If you say the motion ends with consider, that must be an implementation aspect of it, then of course there's a budget, which is the key thing. And I agree with him, it's true. Under the new 2010 constitution, not only parliament, devolution is a very powerful house. They have the resources, they have the assemblies. The judiciary is not the old judiciary, it's an independent judiciary. The professor will agree with me, the executive is not the old executive. Power has been devolved to parliament, to judiciary, Then we have the budget, which is a very, very important circle.
Yes.
Then we have which never used to be there before, as he says, the vetting of public officers, cabinet secretaries, ambassadors, PSS, constitutional office holders, the chief justice. So parliament, yes, is agreeable, but when we talk to now representation, we have 349 members of parliament. Between 2:30 and 6:30, if you give every member of parliament 10 minutes, that's only 24 members of parliament.
Honorable Duale, hold that
That's
thought.
why parliament has failed to give leadership.
But even before we get to the issue of how many times an MP speaks on legislation, he's mentioned that it's 165 bills. I mean, definitely, big clap for 11th parliament. Yes. But let's talk about the quality of those bills. Professor, do you think that they deserve a congratulations on that?
Just in the interest of Duale, he must remember what Shakespeare said, that the evil that men do lives after them. The good is always and often interred with their bone. So if you want to look at parliament and assess it correctly, from a public perspective, you not look at those so-called many bills which are good. What will public remember this parliament for? They will remember an attempt to muzzle the press by parliament. The public, long after today, long after Duale, they will remember an attempt to bury the NGO world. They will remember the security laws which were partially saved by the High Court. The public will remember how the Jubilee side of Parliament went against a word they had had with their colleagues from court to come up with a law that was put in place to save us from the chaos, the demonstrations against IBC, against all parliamentary tradition, in less than 3 months, on their own, Parliament surrounded by security forces with guns. They passed a law. This is what Parliament will be remembered for. And above all, this Parliament will be remembered for going against the Constitution in terms of public resources. The 2010 Constitution is clear that no person or no institution shall bestow upon themselves monetary benefits. Exactly. The Parliament has gone ahead to muzzle CRC and the presidency and awarded itself monies in manners that are obviously unconstitutional.
I mean, the critics have also said that in terms of the opposition checking the majority side of Parliament, when it came to situations where MPs were discussing bills that are, you know, for themselves, giving themselves money, CDF allocation, that Parliament ganged up. The opposition actually ganged up with the majority side. Do you agree?
If you ask the question, the quality of legislation passed, it's not personal to an MP.
Yeah.
The good professor here knows, and Honorable Dwele knows, that where there is friction, even its security, media, gagging laws and all that, it comes from the state. And that's why we fight over them. You know, when you say Parliament, and in many of those things, even some Jubilee MPs disagree with the state. So when we want to talk about Parliament, you know, don't make it trivial. Really, it's like, what is best for our country? You know, when the gentleman from Zalendo talks of Article 124, simply, you look at the history of that article. I've been in this process of constitution making. The history of it is that the states used to decide the budget. Now, a budget making process is a negotiation between the state and Parliament as another organ of the state. Now, how have we performed in Parliament? Very well, because nothing was there to compare this process with.
Right.
It's a new thing, and this Parliament...
And I think Honorable Mudwe will agree that this conversation is supposed to look outward into the future and how we can improve. But we cannot ignore this discussion about MPs and, you know, their remuneration.
Now let me challenge you.
Right.
Which bill in Parliament, before Parliament, when?
Let me ask you, for instance, CDF allocation, how much was it before?
CDF allocation is in law. CDF allocation
but how much was it before and how much is it now?
No, it keeps increasing.
Right.
You remember when CDF came to being, it was the government, the state was only collecting 220 billion. Now we are collecting over $1 trillion. So if you graduate 2.5%, it's in law.
I think they are missing your question. I think they are missing your. You can't even open the debate here. It's clear.
Let's bring Gitungo.
That's from the High Court and it's common sense.
Yes, Gitungo.
And yet you legislate to have that money because you use it as MPs.
To do what? What part of the CDF does an MP use?
If you ask Kenya, they will.
No, I'm asking. I'm not Kenyan because you don't do that.
Before devolution,
yeah.
CDF is good and with good intentions. But because of our political culture, the monies in CDF has been used by politicians to spread the tentacles of patronage and clientelism in our politics. And that's why last year, there was a hard-hitting headline on the Standard saying that 273 MPs plundered the monies. So it's good. Correcting our leaders is good, and this debate is
What are you
going
correcting?
they're suggesting.
Listen, Honorable Dwale and Honorable
Let me come in.
Okay, Honorable Dwale.
CDF, since it was introduced, it's anchored in law that 2.5% of the audited accounts of revenue of every financial year. The same it is for the devolved system of government, not less than 15%. And if you look at the new structure, the new CDF law, a member of...
You must stop there.
Look, can I finish?
You must stop there a
You
bit.
know,
You must stop there a bit. He must stop there a bit and say whether or not it is true that Kenyan money, once it is on the table, it is shared between the national government
Yes.
I was coming to that.
and the
So,
You know,
and the devolved units.
fair enough.
Where does CJ
Professor,
find its route there?
Let's take a short
And that's
break
what the court
and
was
come
asking.
back
You
and
know,
discuss
that's
that
what the
in
court was asking.
totality. Honorable Dwale, I'll give you an opportunity once we come back. Let's just take a short break. When we come back, Dwale, you'll take the mantle. Honorable Dwale, you are talking about a number of bills. You're saying that Parliament has performed exemplary, you know, it's been an exemplary performance. One question, do you think there has been duplication of bills?
No. Let me tell you, Parliament is one institution, even I'll say my son can work. It has a better than the state law office. The best legal department is in Parliament.
Yes.
Yes, sir. When a bill is brought from government, passes through all the stages, the stakeholder comes to the cabinet, AG refers to my office. Whether it is a private member's bill or my bill, it goes through a 21-day scrutiny by a legal team to see even whether it conflicts with the Constitution, whether this act is already in place. I'll give you a good example. Today we have got one bill harmonized, never in another country in the East African region, where Prof can just click in, he'll find the VAT rates, he'll find the income rates, the excess duty. Before we used to have different pieces of legislation. So we have. But again, you know, the three arms of government see each other as checks and balance. Parliament function is to legislate, to produce the bill, public participation. Yes. If there are issues with that bill, which Parliament felt it was right, but the general public felt it's not good, any Kenyan can go to court and even annul the whole bill. But Parliament has a function until it completes its processes. Second, let me tell you, this is a transition Parliament. Maybe one of the challenges, if you ask me, with this Parliament is the number.
That is too big.
Is the governance structure. As a country, we didn't look at the governance structure. Maybe, I'm sure I'll not be very popular. Maybe we didn't need 47 women. We didn't need the 290 constituencies. So that, you know, Parliament every member of Parliament is there to speak on behalf of his people and the country. There's no way you can tell me you are a member of Parliament and you don't speak. It does not translate into you winning your seat.
Okay, and that's good because
but speaking on the floor of the House on an issue is a function of each and every member of Parliament.
Okay, Gitungo, how many bills have been drafted by the majority leader, according to your research?
Mzalendo usually deals with the office of the clerk.
Yes.
And the reports that we usually get, we get them from the office of the clerk. The reports that are publicly available. There are some reports that we may not access because
everything's on the website. Agree, that's all I agree with you.
Right.
There are some reports that we may not access. For instance, I'll give you an example. Like in most of the work, I agree, is usually done in committees. But on Parliament's website, even if you visit it today, you won't find answered reports from those committees. Yes. So you may not know what happened, the deliberation, you may not know.
So how credible is the research?
So we usually, let me finish.
Which is on Hansard, is where a matter is quasi-judicial. Those kind of reports or committee meetings, there are specific rooms, room 9, room 8. But where it's just a normal committee report, like discussing with the budget, ultimately they will bring a report to the House, which will be uploaded into our website.
Okay.
Yes.
So
yeah, like now in the fourth session, there are like 16 reports that they finished and adopted in the House. But it is important because even when you are rating a parliament, you can rate it in terms of how participatory that parliament is with the public because it's a constitutional requirement. And the way I'm saying, even those committee reports and the deliberations and the way their attendance and such, that should be a public information that is accessible to the people. But we usually give riders, we usually give advisories on our reports because yes, we know some of our reports may lack information on some issues. That we usually agree and give advisories on our report.
Honorable Dwale, do you think that there are some bills that you have tabled that have been in the interest of the government, who, of course, that's your priority on the House, but detrimental to your constituency?
You know, and that's why I'm a member of parliament in the first place. If a bill is detrimental not only to my constituency, even to Kenyans, I'll not even put my signature. And that is the beauty about a presidential system of government. We never used to have that in the last parliament. Now the legislature has the power of generating bills or even changing the title of a government bill. Now, what happens when a bill is read for the first time? There must be the element of the public participation. That is where the debate now is. It's put on the newspapers. Serious organizations will comment, but who represents the common Wanjuku on the ground? So that's why if we need to amend the constitution, we must relook at the element of public participation. And we've discussed this.
Let me come
No, I'm not finished.
For a minute.
I'm not finished.
I'll come back to you
For a minute, in terms of public participation.
Let him finish. Let him finish first.
Yeah, you know,
listen, Midiwo,
we
Honorable
kept
Midiwo.
quiet when you were talking.
Let me ask you that same question. Do you think there are bills that Honorable
No,
Duale
let me
has
finish.
tabled that have not been in the favor of his people?
Very many.
Give us an example.
Well, like the Keka laws, the security laws. Recently you saw the Orengo Kiraitu thing and the amendment. All the public participation was against what they were trying to do. But tyranny of numbers. And whatever they wanted to achieve, some of them you see the courts annulling them, which I agree with the majority,
Yes.
that if you are offended, you can go to court.
Fair
And
enough.
that is process of legislation.
Fair enough. And you've mentioned a term that we've had for the last 5 years constantly, the tyranny of numbers. Professor Manyora, do you think that issue has made the 11th Parliament not work in the interest of Kenyans, that it's only been about appeasing the political parties?
This gentleman from Zalendo Trust said that this parliament has a lot of powers under the new constitution. But parliament itself has surrendered its own power. The Jubilee side, with its so-called tyranny of numbers, has surrendered itself in manners that really surprised me. Because we gave them the power through the constitution, they have surrendered it to the executive. Now, what is the result? And this is one of the things that you will be remembered for, that you have given the executive legislative powers. Under our constitution, the president is not obliged to rubber stamp any bill that comes from parliament. He can return it to you. And with a memorandum, suggesting why he's not happy with some such aspect of the bill, so that he cannot assent to it law. What you have done is to allow him to legislate, to turn that bill, to fundamentally alter it. Somebody may say we don't know about legislation. To fundamentally alter it and come up with an almost entirely new law.
Do you disagree that because
Knowing very well,
he's not the first person
listen,
to say
let
that?
me finish. Knowing very well that once it comes to the president, for you to change that law, for you to override what the president has said, you need 2/3 majority.
Yes.
Since you are not going to get it, courtesy of the tyranny of numbers, then you allow the executive to make law.
We cannot have our cake and eat it. Jubilee has the numbers, and Duale has held them together. You know, we can't leave this debate without saying that he has something that normal parliaments admire. You understand?
Yes.
These are very many people who can even change the constitution if they just did a bit more. What Jubilee should have been doing would be to use their numbers for the good causes that Prof is talking about. In many occasions, they have not done that, and it annoys us and annoys the public, including people on the Jubilee side. Now, but look at what is happening in America. Trump, most congressmen, representatives, and senators oppose Trump. Now they are following what he says like sheep, because it's called discipline. It's called discipline.
So discipline,
what we have, discipline
and the interest of Kenyans, what
discipline,
overweighs the other one?
In discipline, in our society, and I can tell you, your leaders are picked from amongst you. We are not importing leaders. The way we behave, the way Matatu drivers behave on the street is the way MPs behave.
Yes.
So for me, that I admire majority leader, that somehow he has managed to even take some of our indisciplined members to his side.
That's what I was going to ask. Do you think for your side, you failed in terms of discipline?
Yes, because we had from the day one, we had no proper leadership. And when you don't have proper leadership, you cannot be proper opposition or even proper government. What Jubilee has done, which is not right, is to use their numbers to reorganize this society, because they had numbers. Maybe never again will you have a parliament where there is such lopsidedness. Because there are issues.
To be fair, Honorable Medio, you have to do an audit before you can talk about the solutions. And this is what we're trying to do.
I think what let me first go back to what the Prof said.
Yes, that the President is sending back
let me
bills.
tell you, and that's why I said you need to have a legislative expert here. The President, under Article 115 of the Constitution, and even before I say that, even Parliament must be checked. That's why the judiciary has to check the Parliament. The President who won, who is the CEO of the country, must have some powers to check Parliament. Because if you give Parliament absolute power, you can turn that Parliament into a rogue Parliament. As you're saying, they can even one evening change the structure of government. They can even change, create positions. So the President in Article 115 is given to do a referral, the same way the President of the United States or any other democracy can do. But the President is given to refer to Parliament through a memoranda only in as far as articles which were passed in that bill. He cannot introduce new things, as the Prophet is saying. Secondly, for us to override the President, because the House can decide to disagree with the memorandum of the President if we raise two-thirds majority.
Has that happened?
Oh, it has happened.
Has that happened?
Once it has happened.
Only once?
It has only
in the 5 years?
It really happens. Because, let me tell you, even he will tell you, every time we have a constitutional bill that requires two-thirds majority, the one that even has passed, you will have about 100 members of Parliament missing. So the best we have raised was 260.
Continue addressing the issue of whether it doesn't change the bill.
So the President will only have a reservation in as far as...
But you are President.
No.
President has changed fundamental, for example, where a bill provides 10% or something, he moves it down to 5.
Let me finish, yes.
That's a fundamental alteration of the bill.
Let me finish. Number one,
he should have reservation on the bill.
Let me finish.
Not to change from 10% revenue
on
the locals to 5%.
He's raising a very difficult point, though.
I want to answer that question.
Okay, go ahead. Professor, let's allow him to answer.
Okay. Article 115 gives the President the power to refer certain section of a bill.
Yes.
Now, it depends on the view, the opinion. Parliament had its opinion on that bill, okay?
Yes.
So just because you don't agree with the President, you will not say, why is he doing that? That is a power bestowed to him. If Kenyans have an issue with that, then we amend.
Let me explain it in a simple way.
Let me explain. No, I have not finished.
Let me explain to you in a simple way.
Just a minute, Prof.
People were talking, I've been listening.
Okay, go ahead.
And I think there must be the culture of tolerance.
Go ahead.
So if Kenyans have a problem in how the President exercises the constitutional powers given to him under Article 115, Kenyans have the powers, or Parliament have the power either to amend that and reduce it.
Yes.
But let me come to what...
But on this issue, Honorable Duale, the question is, has this Parliament allowed the President to abuse that specific article that you're talking about
let me ask you,
to fundamentally change bills
to
get indirectly draft the bills?
Let me ask you, this is a power given to the President.
Let me explain.
Parliament sends bills completed for assent. It is within the purview of the President either to assent or to refer. If he assents, he draws his powers from the Constitution. If he refers, he draws his powers from Article 115.
Honorable Mundiwa, on that issue, do you think the President, in some instances, indirectly was allowed to draft these bills through his reservation?
No. I want to agree with Professor.
Yes.
You know, Dwale sometimes talks a lot to confuse the understanding.
Yes.
Dwale knows that they have broken the law many times. And that is why we have gone to court so many times in the last 4 years. And more often than not, the court has agreed with us. The scenario which has happened, which the good professor is referring to, has happened. The president has done it, and it is unlawful. If the president, when you say 10% of proceeds to go to the people of Turkana, and he crosses and says, I want 5%, now he is making legislation. The president does not have power to legislate, and the courts have agreed. That is really, it's just that simple. And I know if it wasn't for the tyranny of numbers, you know, what we may need to do going into the future as a country to mitigate some of these things. That's why I'm saying we talk to the future. Number one, in a presidential system, you should not have this post of a speaker. Once you have the post of majority leader, it should end there, so that people negotiate outside the floor. But when you have a speaker and people have tyranny of numbers, what happens? They will choose their own speaker. Now, they have a majority leader and they have the speaker. Can you imagine the day, even recently, when I forgot what we were talking about, the last controversy?
The amendments to the electoral laws.
The amendment to electoral laws. I could see my brother Dwale was so furious because the speaker didn't see sense in what they were doing. Then they brought us here. You know how we were brought from, we never even had Christmas, so you should sympathize with that. Courtesy to this gentleman. But what happened, when they barricaded this whole area, you could, you know, I am a deputy leader of my minority. Do you know I could not go beyond GPO with my car?
No, you are lying.
I am telling you.
You came with a car.
I did not.
Wow. We were driving with you. You were driving behind you. You can't drive.
Okay, he's been caught there.
You can't drive.
It was like a security state.
Yes.
It was like a military state.
Why.
Honestly, why do we have such
But
scenarios?
you allow me.
Let me just finish.
I will answer you.
We'll come back.
The first day, they were defeated on a technicality.
Yes.
But I also know that that night, these guys did not sleep. They nearly slept at State House, tongue lashing the speaker. Because we put you there. You know, it's not like you were good enough. We put you there, you must do. So the speaker, what did the speaker do? At around 11:45, before midnight, he regazetted another sitting day. You know, we left Parliament, and the Parliament was a date for reconvening had been given.
The speaker gazettes when he receives
a
calling of the House from the leadership.
Yes.
But and it is me. So it's me who vote.
Did you abuse your power in that regard?
That is what they are saying.
I didn't.
That's what they are saying.
The
Parliament misusing its authority. Parliament misusing its authority.
Yes.
Because even that was unlawful. Because you can only call Parliament when there's an emergency, not when you feel you have lost a vote.
And you need to give us the numbers to watch the other side.
So you have now been to Taiwan government.
Okay, gentlemen, let's take a break, then we come back and wrap up the discussion with that issue of, you know, the military state. Okay, so Gitungo, we start with you. In terms of your research, do you think the structure of the current parliament works? I mean, like, are MPs able to participate effectively, or are there limitations?
Well, number one, the parliament as it is, I think, and this is my opinion, that one, Kenya is overrepresented. There are too many MPs in parliament. And that's why, you know, we cannot have 349 bills. We cannot have 349 motions. So that's why you'll find that there are some people who will not speak even in 3 consecutive sessions. So I think as a nation, we need to be honest with ourselves, have an introspection, and ask ourselves whether we really need this, and maybe have a parliament that is manageable, a parliament that will work the best for us.
Prof, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree with Gitungo that this parliament, and you know, when we were assembling this constitution, that was very clear. Even Raila talked about, say, well, if you asked me, this is too much. But let's see what we shall do in the future. The time is now. We must bite the bullet. We must accept we are too many. But while at it, let's also not offend our women folk. Let's also look at the two-third gender bill.
Yes.
But with this in mind,
yes,
in the context of us having a bloated parliament, where it's not possible to transact business. So let us be bold enough, like he says. Let us re-examine it. Let us come up with a fresh number. But you see, what is appalling is that even with 349, these guys have a problem with quorum. Yeah. And now it is 50, but they are telling us they want to reduce it. Can you imagine it? So some of the things you are going to be remembered for, really, are those ones. That you cannot raise a quorum of 50 out of 349. You want to reduce it.
Has that been a challenge, Duale?
No, you know, Kenya's governance structure is bloated.
Bloated.
You can't have a 1,450 MCAs earning that 349 members of parliament. Governors employing how many political advisors, social advisors, all this. You know, that our wage bill as a country has surpassed the international standard. So we must, and I agree with him, not only the parliament, there's 20% we must fix in this constitution. 20%. And we must fix when we are together, the way we did the constitution.
Yeah.
You know, not opposition, not government. Kenyan society must change attitude towards women. It's a societal. It's in the value system. You can't blame Honorable Jaco. You can't blame me. Then we need to deal with the numbers. We need to deal with the committees. You know, the committees are...
And we need to stop paying committees.
Yes, and you know...
the problem with the committees?
I agree with me.
No.
Please,
Which committee?
Let's not pay MPs for sitting allowance and for committee sitting. Please,
no.
Let's agree with me.
No. What we have agreed.
For the sake of this country, we love.
No. Let me tell you. Committees, these days, if you go to every committee,
yes,
if you don't...
Now I'm begging.
What do we say? If you don't sit,
today.
if you don't sit in a committee for less than 45 minutes, you are not paid. If you say you are going for a committee meeting to Mombasa, and you have signed, and your air ticket has been issued, and you don't go, that air ticket, you will pay it. This is a new leadership thing we have brought to Parliament.
Honorable Mudio, do you agree with that issue of numbers, that we need to change the structure of Parliament?
That is his baby.
That's my baby. I don't believe, let me just begin there. The state of California has 40 million people. Kenya as a country has 40 million people. Kenya has 2,494 elected people. Those are the people we are going to elect on August 8th.
Correct.
2,494.
Wonderful.
California has 127. Same people. The GDPs, GDP goes in the California ones about 50 times.
Ethiopia has 340 and the 70 million population.
Exactly. So what we're dealing with, we got into a constitution without costing it. Again, the civil society. Even when people came to Naivasha, this thing you are calling affirmative action, the 47 seats, the women in Naivasha, Sally Kosgei, Margaret Kamar, Charity Ngilu, Martha Karua said, give us only 20 years. When we came back here, at that national, the building, no, there's a building there on Harambee Avenue where the COE was sitting. The civil society took that 20 out. The women themselves said, we want to compete. Because somebody like Charity Ngilu or Martha Karua or Margaret Kamar is better than 10 of these members of parliament, men that I know.
So if we had a smaller parliament this time around, do you think we wouldn't have seen this kind of scenes we saw the last 5 years?
That is for sure. That is for sure, because when you see members of parliament, majority leader will tell you, we sit for 4 hours. Majority leader moves a bill, which affects Kenyans the day it is signed.
Yeah.
So he talks for his 20, 25 minutes, because by law, he must explain to the country what he's trying to do. My leader comes in and does the same. How much time is left? Then you know the next MP, who is the representative of the people on the House, you know what he says? because we are many, let us talk for 2 minutes. Who in their right mind can...
Before you
Let me
reach
say
there,
something.
just to help him.
Yeah.
You know, the critical stage in legislation, in fact, is when we are at the committee of the whole house, where we are looking at clause by clause. And the media should help us. Yes. We are hardly 10. And then, in fact, one incident happened to me in last parliament. A bill we have finished, it has been assented. A member of parliament called me at midnight. And he said, when is that bill coming for? I want to come and contribute. And I told him, my friend, are you crazy?
Yeah, so that
so
can
so tracking. So even
but
the committee of the whole house.
This issue about women, which you must be passionate about, of course.
She's one of them.
Exactly. It does not mean, I am one person, I have constantly voted against this one-third gender rule.
Why?
Because I am saying there's no day I will support it if we don't address the numbers. You can have 10 members of parliament, but still come up with a formula that maintains the one-third. So you maintain the constitutional provision.
What you oppose is they wanted to take the house to have
400. I mean,
they added another 100.
If you ask a woman in Wajir, a mother, does she need another woman in parliament, or she needs milk for her children?
But
use
that's, I think, a fair comparison.
Because Wajir,
that's an unfair
Wajir is not here.
But I agree with that.
I think when it comes to women, we don't necessarily have to implement that, and especially not when we have this big parliament. Yes. But you cannot deny the fact that you cannot, when you have half of the society, half of you,
more than half,
not having a voice in the affairs of the country or the state, something must be wrong. So we must bring our women on board. But how we do it, we must do it intelligently. We shouldn't bloat parliament beyond where it is. I'm happy that this conversation is on, that we need to reduce parliament. But even after we have done that, there's one critical element we shall have to do. We have turned members of parliament into managers. This we must deal with.
You know, this CDF, it may go the way you want. And when you want to say take development away, I want to agree with majority and the prof. But something must follow that. What the gentleman has said, that you must do proper civic education, because the MPs are associated with development. And I can tell you, the reason why turnover is so much is because people on the ground know instantly that we have made a mistake. Now, when you try to, say, take CDF away, if you take the CDF of game and take it to Siaya County, you've killed the people of game. This year alone, we have given 15,000 kids bursaries. The county has given none. So what you're doing, improve this thing. You know, even the argument that you take it, the most devolved unit of devolution is a constituency.
So fair enough, Honorable Midio.
Yeah.
But I want to ask you one other thing as we wrap up. Corruption in Parliament.
Yeah.
In committees, this is the first time that we've seen an entire committee disbanded because of allegations of corruption. That's the Mutava Musimi committee. Yeah. You know what happened to Ababu Namwamba's committee as well. What's your take on that? Do you feel like, to some extent, MPs from the opposition side failed on this matter?
No, now Kenya, including the media, Kenya is a very corrupt society, and unless we accept that corruption has permeated our society to the core, you can't begin to fix it. Let me tell you, the people who are being investigated by Parliament are the same people who have stolen from public coffers. Even the money they're using to bribe us is not from them. This is a society, none of these people is clean. No, all Kenyans. This place, we need some Magufuli.
But you know where?
And I want to tell you something. Leader, let me just say one last thing. The MPs you see today do not enjoy the same financial privileges like Duale and I enjoyed in the last parliament. And I can tell you one thing. People insisted MPs must pay taxes. So now everybody pays taxes on everything. It takes away 360,000 shillings up top from an MP. But the requirements, because the salary has actually gone down, the requirement on an MP, if I take you to Parliament now, all you see is people who just think money.
Yeah.
And the reason why,
then it's an integrity problem, because I pay tax, but that doesn't mean that
you
I can be corrupt.
pay tax.
Yes.
You pay tax, but you do not, like now. Let me tell you, when I live here, today is Tuesday, I already have about 7 people because of the doctor strike, who need to be buried. In fact, one died last night, another one died yesterday morning in Ongata Rongai, but there are 7 that I know. By Friday, because of this doctor strike, something unusual has happened to me in 2 weeks ago. I buried 17 people that I know in my constituency. And they all come to you for help. They don't have. In fact, if you go to those funerals, you can sell your coat and say, please, give
It feels like a justification, honestly. It sounds like a justification.
Yeah. No, we cannot justify corruption, whether it's in parliament, whether it's in everywhere.
I was not justifying
I'm saying, I think the leadership, member of parliament, governor, ministers, when you're in leadership and you're the custodian of public trust, you should be the last person to be involved in corruption. And I want to go on record. Because the problem is societal. It's deep inherited. Today, if my son is 17 years, if he comes with a new Land Cruiser, I want to ask, where you got it from? I say, my son, you're good.
You're doing well.
In fact, there were days when our fathers used to check our school bags, that if the son has a different ball pen, he will ask, where do you got this from? These days, no, so we have a serious societal value system. But leaders who are seen to lead the communities must not be part of that corruption. Today is very, very sad. The new constitution created institutions to fight corruption. Am I right? The office of the DPP, the office of the Anti-Corruption Commission, the judiciary, the Auditor General, the DCI, Parliament. All those institutions are now heaven of corruption.
Is there corruption in parliament?
There is corruption in parliament. There is corruption in media. In fact, the worst place where corruption. Let me tell you. Let me tell you. Let me tell you. Let me tell you. For my story to appear in a very good page, or for my story to appear in #1 in the media, I must bribe.
I mean.
No, let's be very frank. If we have to fight corruption, the media is as corrupt as parliament, as EACC, as anywhere.
So have you bribed to get a story in
No, let me tell you, the private sector, I don't need to tell you. The private sector is as corrupt as the public sector, the payer. And that's why we had this parliament passed anti-bribery bill for the private sector.
And that's why
but it's an admission.
No, but let me put a rider. Let me put a rider. Let me put a rider. In all those institutions, including parliament and media, not everybody is corrupt, but there are elements who are corrupt.
Gichungo, I want to give you the one last word on this discussion in terms of credibility of parliament. Do you see a brighter future ahead?
There is a book written which says Why Nations Fail. And nations fail because of lack of institutions. And as a country, as leaders, Honorable Duale, Honorable Jakoya, you have the powers to strengthen our institutions. You have the powers to strengthen the Auditor General, the EACC, the Parliament itself. So you hold the future for us. The Parliament as a place whereby people go and discuss important issues of this country. I think you can change. It's not helpless. It's not bad, as you've said. Another thing I would like to plead with you. Yes, Parliament has passed so many laws. It has passed so many motions. But I plead with you two leaders, maybe make sure that when you pass something, it is enforced. Yes, I understand there is a committee on implementation in Parliament. Make sure that when you pass something, the Kenyans see the impact of that bill that you passed. The impact trickles down to the normal Mwananchi.
Gentlemen, thank you so much. I hope this is the beginning of this discussion. Of course, there's still a lot more to be discussed, but I'm really glad that we've started it.
Roundtable is recorded at the Intercontinental Hotel.